Hello and welcome to the big picture. The focus on the CBI and its functioning seems to continue unrelentingly. After the last week's Guwahati High Court judgment questioning the very existence of the organization, Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh has raised several questions about its functioning now. The PM's speech at the international conference yesterday has sought to focus on the role of the CBI in investigating economic crimes. His caution against going overboard in investigations into areas of policy making brings the focus once again on the challenges faced by the CBI. He also made it clear that there can only be operational autonomy and full autonomy is not possible considering the nature of our constitution and the need for oversight. Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, who spoke today at the same conference, has also raised similar issues and has also criticized both the CBI and CAG for overstepping their limits. Today we will discuss the issues raised by both the Prime Minister and Finance Minister while looking at whether policy errors are being seen as criminality and how they need to be tackled. To discuss this, I have with me Nirmala Sitharaman, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Kamal Farooqui, Samajwadi Party leader, and P.C. Sharma, former director of the CBI. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sharma, I would like to come to you first, since this is about CBI and all these things which are being discussed about the CBI all these days, all these weeks and in the recent past. Prime Minister says that please don't. You have to respect policy making. You cannot policy making and policing. The line has to be clear. Apparently, he talks about how things have changed over the years, how the policies have changed over the years, and he hints that the CBI doesn't seem to be in tune with what's happening.
Well, Prime Minister is very right that CBI, while undertaking investigations or inquiries, have to carefully study the dynamics of a decision making.
Right.
We have to carefully find out whether a particular decision smacks of criminality or whether it's just a policy decision. Also, we have to see whether the decision has been taken bona fide. If there are bona fide mistakes, I don't think they can be termed as criminal decisions. But if there are errors intentionally committed with a view to helping somebody or with a view to causing loss to the government, these certainly come within the arena of the criminality.
But Mr. Sharma, my question is this. How do you distinguish these errors of judgment and criminal acts?
Well,
is the CBI equipped enough? Because that seems to be the primary focus of both the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister.
That will depend on the persons who take the decision. Are they experienced enough? Are they well up with the functioning of the government, decision-making process, and various things involved? And Prime Minister also made one very important point, that there should be proper training. Only a trained mind can decide. And you can't decide matters in the CBI casually. There are very important matters which are referred to this agency, and one has to, on the basis of one's experience, expertise, take a correct decision.
Fine, but do you think presently the CBI is equipped with such expertise?
Well, I will not be commenting on that. I have left CBI about 10 years back.
But you have been watching the cases, you have been watching the high-profile cases.
But I'm sure there are numbers.
I'm sure when Prime Minister was talking about it, the recent cases which have been in the focus must have been on his mind.
These cases are under investigation. I have only as much knowledge as anybody has gathered from the newspapers. It's very difficult to comment whether those decisions taken by the CBI are correct or not. Either the outcome of the CBI investigations will decide it, or the court will decide it. I cannot comment upon the abilities, the skills of the CBI, but I'm sure they have these things.
You think they have the skills?
They should be having such an experienced, old investigating agency where selection of officers is very carefully done, and if they do not have these skills, then I'm sorry for that.
You're sorry for that. Nirmala, you think the Prime Minister has raised these key points? Because can we look at these issues? Obviously, it's going to acquire, it's already acquired political color to what he has said. But if you look beyond the politics, don't you think that he has raised certain important issues which will have ramifications not just for the present government but for all future governments also?
Yeah, absolutely. They are very critical issues. and to hear it from the Prime Minister and also former Home Minister who now holds
The
finance
Minister, yes.
portfolio, and with an increasing number of economic offences.
Yes.
It's very, very gratifying that these things are being spoken about. But the fact remains here that if you're talking about CBI and you're giving an advisory in a way to the CBI to remain within the criminal angles of investigation and not to trespass on what comes under the policy, I take that argument too, but with a pinch of salt. Every time the CBI tries to do a professional job, it is in this government, under this dispensation, that we found that the government's interference, caught sometimes even red hand, while preparing the affidavit on a Supreme Court monitored investigation. So the interference to bring in the political element rather than leave the professional element in the CBI to function and therefore to establish that credibility which they should definitely establish is from this government. One. The other side, if really I want to take this argument which the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have said, right, then if there are some kind of problems related to the policy and its implementation, we saw the CAG also being questioned on it. But more than that,
CAG has been questioned today by the
more
Finance
than
Minister.
that, more than that, the JPC, after all, was an institution within the parliamentary framework which would have looked into the policy related matters aside from the criminality. What has been the approach of the current government and the ministers belonging to the government and the ruling party? They stonewalled it. So I find these two lectures very pedagogically interesting, but practically they are trying to have both ways. I'll dictate to the CBI, but I'll also disrupt the policy making and policy investigative JPC. So the government is trying to have it both ways.
You think they are having it both ways? Isn't it ironical that the government is also constantly accused of of manipulating the IBI, controlling the IBI, and here the tone and tenor of the speeches of both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, don't you think there is an element of frustration in that?
There is certainly, and also you're dictating terms to CBI, which is anyway being a puppet to you. It is not just a random off-the-cuff charge. You have misused the CBI, and now to tell them, oh, I'm sorry, you cannot play victim, which was the Finance Minister's word. That is unacceptable, I would think, because all that we want the government, particularly in the light of the Guwahati judgment, and that is not in isolation, let me remind you, because one of the ruling party's member of parliament, who happens now to be the information broadcasting minister, had raised this issue in 2010 in the parliament.
He had brought a private member's bill actually.
And questioned the legality or the foundation of the CBI. And at that time, the government gave a very convincing answer saying, no, nothing to worry. So their own member of parliament raises a question, they look the other way. And now when the High Court
Prime Minister has addressed that issue yesterday. He says that whatever needs to be done will be done to retain it. Well, we are now joined in by Renuka Chowdhary, the Congress spokesperson. Welcome, Renuka. You must have heard the last bit of what Nirmala was talking about. We are discussing about the CBI and the Prime Minister's speech and the Finance Minister's speech today. It's ironical. What Nirmala is saying is that these speeches are pedagogically fine, but the problem is that the government is trying to play both ways. It cannot play both ways. It is because it is seen as having manipulated the CBI, and now it is raising questions about the functioning of the CBI. What do you have to say to that?
I just say that the BJP still lacks imagination. They have to pontify on everything. They always want to make so much of nothing. But then they lack governance. What they have not had in experience, they can't expedite today. So they have to understand, beyond discussing the nitty-gritty of these issues, there is the act of governance that one has to take into consideration. Governing a nation is an ongoing process. To be hair-splitting and nitpicking does not make a governance. And while the CBI, while everybody pleads for its autonomy, and the Prime Minister of this country has addressed the issues, and very, very explicitly so, I think you have to understand and appreciate that you cannot have, let the BJP, let Parliament function. Let them come to the house, let them discuss this threadbare and change the law. But until that happens, I think you have to appreciate they have to report to someone.
Okay,
And that
autonomy,
someone
the issue
happens
of,
to be the
we will,
government as of now.
Renuka will come to the issue of autonomy, but the Prime Minister's essential and basic point which he has made is that policy making and should not be taken, policy making and policing should be, there should be a line between the two. When he says that, is there a sense of frustration in him when he talks about these issues? Because in the recent past, obviously he must be having the recent cases in mind, what has happened in the Colgate and other things. You think that is where these suggestions are coming from?
You have to understand, the suggestions are not coming from the Prime Minister of a country who's concerned about tunnel vision on certain issues. Certainly not. I think at least we should be able to appreciate that the Prime Minister has a pan-India vision. He looks at things overall. There is a matrix on which we work, and that is why I said the word governance. Governance is about policy decision making. Governance is an intricate, explicit.
No, that's fine. But Renuka, do you think? Are you saying that there is a problem with the way the CBI is functioning now?
It's not about a problem. It is about demarcating. It is about boundaries. It is about identifying the turf on which each one works and operates, sometimes collectively and sometimes independently. It is about hierarchy and protocol, and it is about giving an instruction and the autonomy of CBI, whether it actually spells out challenging or quantifying policy that a government has made.
Okay.
How is the CBI qualified to question policy decision making?
Okay.
We are in a democracy, by the way.
Okay. Mr. Farooqui, you think that there is a problem there? You said, policy making, the CBI, do you think the CBI is entering into the, area of policy making and where they should not be entering?
Let me make it first very clear. I'm speaking on my personal behalf. I'm not speaking on behalf of any political party, and I don't want to get into the politics of the whole thing. What Mr. Sharma has said, I totally agree with him. And today's Prime Minister statement and Chidambaram's statement, I totally agree with it. He has referred, both of them have referred, Radha Chandra has referred to the SCAG also. As an auditor, this is not my duty to go to do the business. Doing the business is the job of my client, in fact. Right. I would simply have to see whether the normal accounting principles have been adopted or not. And if there is any deviation from that, in the normal accounting principle, if there is a deviation and there is a motive behind it, then only the policing comes into picture.
So as what you are saying is, as an accountant, your job is to say whether the books of accounts are kept properly or not.
Properly kept.
You don't have to tell them. You cannot tell them how to conduct their business.
No, this is not my job. This is not my job how to conduct the business. Conducting the job is that of my client. So it is for the client. But suppose the policies have been decided and then policies have been changed with some ulterior motive, then the policing come into picture. But otherwise, the CAG, to me in fact, I have great respect for the earlier CAG chairman. But at the same time, he has crossed his limit while he was quantifying something which was not there on record. He was trying to find out that this was a loss of profit. That is not my job. The same case is with CBI.
With the CBI?
Same case is with CBI. CBI, in fact, they are not supposed to go and question the policy, because if they start questioning the policy, how the country will run? What Renuka is saying is absolutely right. It's a democracy. How would I run the government if this? I am supposed to say it, but this is the decision of the parliament, the legislation to formalize the policies. If the policies have been twisted to the benefit of a particular person, then the police come into picture. Otherwise,
that is where the problem seems to lie. Whether it is to Mr. Sharma, my question, I am coming back to the same question to you. Does the CBI, because questions have been raised about its, I won't say intentions, but about its ability. Does the CBI have the ability? These are questions being raised too. And do you think that there is a problem there in the way the CBI looks at these issues?
I don't think there should be any problem, and it is not difficult to find out whether a particular decision smacks of criminality or it is a just a policy
You,
decision.
you think it's not difficult?
It's not difficult. It's
For a
not,
professional,
and
it is not
particularly,
difficult.
I can say on the basis of
Yes.
my long experience in the CBI, I've been there. It is not difficult to find out whether this decision has been a policy decision, or it's a well-intended decision, or whether
Or there is a malified
or
intention?
there is a malified. It's not difficult at all. And if the police officers cannot detect this, and I said earlier, I'm sorry for that. They are very able, well-educated, experienced officers selected through a rigorous procedure, and they're expected to take correct decisions.
Nirmala, you think that the CBI has been doing a good job on all these cases which has been going on? You think there was no need for the Prime Minister to sound the way he has sounded?
See, one thing, I don't doubt that the CBI has professionalism, very high, good quality professionalism. I don't doubt at all. I think Indian police service, which is largely found in the CBI, is adequately equipped with all kinds of technology and other forensic knowledge to be there and do their job. But the point here is, today all of us are, instead of owning up certain kind of responsibilities, pointing fingers at various different people. I'll just take a minute. As regards a policy which is stated, announced and approved, and following it, whoever has an issue, but when the policy itself is violated, somewhere either the JPC or the CBI will have to take it up and speak about it. In the case of Colgate, an announced policy for going for global tender had been announced, and the procedures for passing as a law were all taken up, and the meanwhile you gave it all on some other basis other than that.
But at that point when it was given, that was the policy of the government.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute.
Policy of the government was to auction.
That's right, but they did
sorry,
not.
the policy of the auction.
You're right.
The policy of the government, intended policy was to auction, but the fact was that still no decision had been taken at that point of time.
That the Prime Minister had announced that he would move over to the
Yes, that was the
auctioning has
intention.
been done.
That was
Prime
the
Minister's
intention.
no, intention was stated.
Okay. No,
Anyway.
intention was stated. No, my question is this. No,
Therefore, no, I was going
I'll help you to.
No, you don't need to
discuss
help me.
this.
Thank you.
I-
I'll
I'm-
be
no,
at fault if you want to correct me.
No, I am saying that if now in this case, in this what you're talking about, the Colgate case, where the intention of the Prime Minister was there to auction, but no decision had been taken, so they followed whatever was the policy at that point of time. Now, can the CBI sit in judgment over this? This is the question.
Absolutely not. Wait a minute. Here, what was the problem? The problem is the matter had already gone to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was monitoring the CBI, explicitly stated to the CBI that you don't need to take permission or clearance from anybody else, you'll directly report to us. After that, what happened was public knowledge. You had the officials, the law officers and the ministry officials sitting together to tweak a particular affidavit. It is in such instances that the CBI, if it starts to assert its autonomy, now conveniently we are telling, no, you can't come on to the matter of policy. But isn't that the matter in the court?
Absolutely.
So, one.
Yes.
And second, the same case, if you look at the 2G, if you let us agree that the criminality is what the CBI has to take care of, and the other things are to be taken care of by somebody else to find out if there was a problem, the JPC was set up, abusing the BJP, saying you are an obstructionist. Finally, the government gave in and gave a JPC. You saw the way in which the ruling party is conducting itself.
Yes, Mr. Farooqui.
This, in fact,
Quickly.
to my sister, I would like to say it, that whosoever is in the government does this kind of thing. Now, look at the Gujarat issue. CBI is investigating the Isha Jahan case, and they are not doing it on their own. They are doing on the advice of the High Court. But Mr. Modi has already started making, and the BJP has already started making allegations that look, CBI has been working against. So it's very convenient for the politicians to use the CBI like this. If they are doing good job in Isha Jahan case, then they will be termed that they are taking dictates from the government. That is what is the problem.
Renuka, what Nirmala says. Nirmala says that whenever it's convenient, you will use the CBI. Now the two cases which she spoke about, isn't that where the Prime Minister's statement is coming from?
I don't think so. I don't think you should see it in that way. I mean, this is a convenient choice that people can make, and you have to remember that in the cases where the CBI worked against the government or said something against the government, the BJP lapped it up and patted them on the shoulder. And the minute it comes with the government, then of course they're being misused by the government. Look, these are the porosities. This is the porosity that exists in the system as it is. And I think it would do us all good to appreciate what the CBI is doing. The CBI must go about its business of strengthening their wings in the state governments and in other places, so that they ensure that there is a corruption-free system that exists, and not just pick one or two cases, which they don't. They generally apply their minds and their policing efforts across the nation.
No, but
And they should be allowed to do that. Now, the fact of the matter is,
but the question is, Renuka, is whether administrative decisions, policy making, does the CBI, can the CBI look into it or not? Because Mr. Sharma says, they have adequate abilities. They have adequate abilities to make out what is criminal and what is not criminal. So why this lecture to the CBI?
There's no doubt about it. We are not questioning. No. Hello. Let's be very clear about one thing. The CBI has to do its business of policing a system.
Absolutely.
They are not the authorities on policy decision making. Yeah. Policy is the exclusive business of the government.
I agree with you.
Whichever government is in charge. It is government that will do it, and it is an extremely multi-layered, complex procedure. I do believe that the CBI has competent officers within the framework of what the CBI requires. But no, I do not believe that they have any authority or ability to talk about on policy. Yes, they can give their suggestions if they want to as citizens online.
Not as. I don't think they can.
You can't say that they will question the government policy.
No, I am not saying. I am not saying questioning the policy. I am asking the question. I am asking if during the implementation of this policy there is certain amount of the way this policy has been implemented, if there is any suspicion of criminality, if there is any suspicion of this policy not being implemented properly, should or should not the CBI look into it?
They should.
See, the basic thing
there is no denying the CBI can look into it if they find a base. Oh, sorry, were you asking me or someone?
Yes, I am asking you. I am asking you, Renuka.
So if the CBI sees actual criminal activity there, they have a right to question. But to assume, to say that the government should not do this but do this because this would give a better result is a bit absurd.
Absolutely, that fully agree. Yes, Mr. Sharma.
No, what I was trying to emphasize is that the basic training of a CBI or any police officer is to find out what is criminal and what is not criminal. And I do not think CBI officers, particularly who are well trained, highly professional, will venture into areas which are not criminal areas.
But that is the suspicion, that is the charge against them.
No, the suspicion is wrong.
There is a charge against them now.
And to say
this charge, by the way,
to say this about CBI, that sometimes they speak for the government, sometimes they speak against the government, is absolutely wrong.
Incorrect.
They do their investigations.
It's incorrect.
They do their investigation as per the report presented to them, and what they do is the truth, the fact finding.
Why do you think the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have raised these issues at all?
Well, I do not know. But to say that CBI is speaking against somebody or CBI is speaking for somebody is absolutely wrong.
It's not a question of speaking.
CBI is doing a honest job of fact finding.
Okay.
Fact finding.
Okay, Mr. Just one more thing, we are running out of time. The issue of autonomy. The Prime Minister has made it clear that beyond a point, beyond operational autonomy, you can't expect autonomy. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely right. You see, the sufficient functional autonomy exists within the existing legal framework. And if you are honest about your job, if you are conscientious about your job, you don't need any more autonomy.
Nirmala?
Well, during the Lokpal debate,
yes,
we all spoke about the various formulations through which the autonomy of the CBI can be ensured within a structure where the accountability also will be kept to the Parliament.
Yes.
Right.
And I think those lines will have to be now clarified, at least in the context of the Guwahati High Court, post which we are trying to bring in the legal basis, which had been left as a loose end unattended till now. Yes.
There is no, there's
That's
been
right.
no legislative backing, Mr. Sharma. One second,
No,
Mr.
I-
Sharma, you think that legislative backing all these
I'll
years
tell you one
have
thing.
created
Please-
any problems in the
please
functioning of
listen to me.
CBI?
Please listen to me. I have a view about the Guwahati High Court, Honorable High Court of the Guwahati, got this judgment. They have given their judgment only on Central Bureau of Investigation.
Right.
Central Bureau of Investigation perhaps is not the body from which CBI or we as police officers draw their legal authority. That authority is driven from special police establishment.
Right? But that is being questioned now.
No, I have not studied the judgment. After I study, I will be able to give you more considered opinion. But I don't think this is going to have a very serious impact on the ongoing investigation.
Okay, yes.
Not that I want to contradict an official who's held very high position in the CBI.
He was the director of the CBI.
Absolutely. The individual authorities of the police officials who draw their powers and work according to the oath they take towards the constitution is one thing. But the other thing is the institution of the CBI itself, to which they get deputed.
Yes.
And in that institutions, if there are certain responsibilities or some kind of investigational terms of references given to them, where does that organization draw its powers from? And therefore, there is no contradiction in what the former director tells us here. But the institution of CBI is what we are talking about. And on that, the government had, in spite of a member of parliament, Mr. Manish
That's
Tiwari,
right.
raising
You
it,
mentioned that earlier. The
looked
fact-
the other side.
the fact
And now
is
I
that-
think it's time up for tying the loose end
I-
and
just a
making the
minute.
fact is
reality.
that-
I want
No, the
to
fact is
clarify
that the
something.
Prime Minister has raised this issue.
That's right.
He has mentioned the Guwahati High Court judgment, and he agrees that something needs to be done to see that the CBI's operation doesn't functioning. Doesn't get
Something needs to
affected.
be done.
And
He has said something needs to be done about the CBI,
Yes.
not SPE Act.
That's right.
Sir,
There can be
No,
just a
yes.
minute.
Yeah, sir.
SPE
No, but
Act was-
if the CBI's, the existence of CBI is under question as far as the Guwahati High Court judgment
there
is
could be
concerned.
flaws.
So,
Those procedure
we will have
procedural
yes,
flaws.
we're running out.
They can be,
Yes, Mr.
they can be
Farooqui.
corrected.
For that matter, I say when we are talking about CBI or CAG or any other agency we are talking about, in fact, any officer, whether it is CBI officer, it's a CAG or any other officer, he has got the allegiance toward the Constitution. If he is taking orders from anybody else, he is doing
Absolutely
it on
wrong.
He is doing it on his own cost and risk.
Okay,
He will be
I think on that note we need to end. We completely run out of time. Sorry, Renuka. I'm sure I would have liked to come to you, but we are completely run out of time. Thanks to all my guests. This is a debate which will continue because the Prime Minister has raised this issue, the Finance Minister has raised this issue, the way the CBI functions, all these matters, the new issues of corruption and the new policy atmosphere which prevails. This is something which needs more discussion. Thanks to all my guests, Renuka Chowdhary, Nirmala Sitharaman, Kamal Farooqui and Mr. PC Sharma. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.